Hello, thank you for your interest in my poster titled Bilingual Non-Selective Activation Modulates Attention During Visual Object Search. My name is Naomi Vingron and I'm a Ph.D. candidate at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. So in this study, we capitalized on the characteristics of bilingualism to investigate how this might inform the broader link between language and vision. So individuals who are bilingual, they usually have two separate but closely linked sets of world knowledge or experiences that are activated simultaneously as they interact with their environments. And this phenomenon is called non-selective activation. Non-selective activation often occurs in the process of reading, but also language comprehension. And it's often evidenced by interlingual homograph interference. And interlingual homographs are words that share form but not meaning across languages. So one example of this would be a crane, so C-R-A-N-E as a word exists in both French and English, but in French it refers to a skull, whereas in English it refers to a machine. So these types of words cause cross-language ambiguity that bilinguals need to resolve. Now, traditionally in the literature, the language system is often seen as architecturally separate and maybe modular from other cognitive systems such as visual attention. Nevertheless, both language and vision tasks often rely on the respective other mechanism, for example, in the visual world task or even in categorical search. Little work has been done up to this point to characterize the nature of the link that might exist between language and vision. So in this study, we investigate how language processing, specifically in the form of bilingual non-selective activation, interacts with visual attention by observing bilingual performance on a language-cued visual object search task. So our hypotheses are based on two prominent models in the literature currently. First, the parallel contingent independence hypothesis, which proposes a unidirectional link between the two processes. And based on this, we would hypothesize that cross-language ambiguity would not impact visual processing, as it would be resolved independently of any visual information being processed during the search. Contrary to this, the cascaded activation model of visual linguistic interactions proposes a bidirectional link whereby the two processes are actually linked through working memory. So based on this model, we would hypothesize that visual information is integrated in language processing so that increased language processing burdens would cause performance to suffer. So we would expect visual search performance to suffer when it's cued with an interlingual homograph. Now, we tested 58 highly proficient French-English bilinguals who completed a visual search task, and 24 of them had English as their first language, and 34 had French as the first language. In the task itself, participants were asked to make a target present, target absent response. They first saw the cue followed by a fixation cross and then a 10-image search array. They first completed the task in their L1, French or English, followed by another block in their second language, again, French or English. So the language of the respective experimental block determined the target representation of the cue. Now, to give an example of how we constructed the visual search arrays, so let's say the target was crane, C-R-A-N-E. We would have a target. If the target language was French here, the target would be a skull. And then embedded in the 10-image search array, we would also have the translation competitor, so the English representation of the word, here the non-target language, as well as, and this was only in the high competition condition, we also added a within language semantic competitor that was another member of the same semantic category as the target in the target language. We compared interlingual homographs to language unique words, so words that only existed in one of the two languages. And these two types of words were matched group-wise on word frequency and word length. So these are just some examples of what the visual search arrays looked like in our 4 different conditions. So in the interlingual homograph low competition condition, we only have the 2 representations of the interlingual homograph, whereas in the high competition interlingual homograph condition, we have the 2 representations of the word as well as the semantic distractor here. In the language unique low competition condition, the only task relevant object present in the display is the target itself. Here, the French representation, pineapple, ananas. And in the high competition language unique condition, we also added a within language semantic competitor right here. In this case, a watermelon. Moving on to results, we analyzed response accuracy, correct reaction times, time to target, and verification time. To do this, we used generalized mixed effects models to analyze accuracy, as well as linear mixed effects models to analyze correct reaction times, time to target, and verification time. And this is just an example of what our model commands look like. Now, on response accuracy, here you see that the blue line represents participants performing the task in their L2, the red line represents participants performing it in their L1. So we see that generally accuracy was lower. So this is the target present, target absent response for interlingual homographs compared to language unique words. And we also found that these responses were more accurate when the task was completed in a participant's L1 compared to their L2. And this is actually in line with a lot of things that we have been finding looking at interlingual homographs in reading tasks or purely linguistic tasks. Now for correct reaction times, we find that searches for interlingual homograph targets took longer than searches for language unique targets. We also found that searches in the L1 were performed more quickly than in the L2, and we also found an interaction effect of word type and language block, specifically that there was a bigger difference between the homograph performance and the language unique performance when participants were completing the task in their second language. Now for time to target, we actually did not find any significant effects in our models. So we'll move right along to verification time. So on our verification time models, we found a three-way interaction between the level of competition, word type, and language of the block. Specifically, when participants were completing the task in their second language, verification times were shorter on interlingual homograph trials when a within language semantic competitor was present. So in what we thought would be a more difficult condition, specifically the high competition condition, where there are more objects in the search array that match working memory content, we actually are finding that participants find this easier and they verify faster. To sum up, our results suggest that the process of non-selective activation modulates visual search performance and strategy. When resolving cross-language ambiguity resulting from non-selective activation, the additional working memory load that's introduced by the presence of a within language semantic competitor does not in fact hurt participants' performance, but rather what we're seeing is that additional information that reinforces the target language context is actually aiding decision-making. And this might function similarly to the way that readers use sentence context when they're trying to resolve cross-language ambiguity during reading. So in sum, this suggests that language and visual processing may in fact be interacting to the extent that they enable us to integrate information from both the visual and the linguistic modality in order to more efficiently resolve ambiguity. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch, and thank you very much.